This is the Graceful Atheist Podcast. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on the Apple Podcast Store, rate the podcast on Spotify, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening. The Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group continues to grow and is a safe place to question, to deconstruct, and deconvert. So please join at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. Special thanks to Mike T for editing today's show. On to today's show. Guest host Arline talks to our guest this week, Treasure. Treasure grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist tradition. Ministry was a major part of her family's life. She was a major part of worship and used her voice to worship God and to participate in the church. In 2020, she began to question her faith, to begin the process of deconstructing, to ask very hard questions. She asked herself, does prayer work? Why am I here? And began to recognize how ministry had used her for her voice in one way or another. She now finds a lot of peace in yoga and other practices. Here is Treasure to tell her story.
Hello, Treasure. Welcome to the Graceful Atheist Podcast.
Hey, Arline. Happy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited. You and I have been trying to make this happen, so I'm excited we finally are. You and I met through a mutual friend on Instagram, and you are part of the Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group, and so I've gotten to know you there. So, I'm really glad you're here today. We'll start the same place we always do. Tell me about your spiritual background growing up.
I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist, pretty much Christian, but its own little section, and pretty much believing that Saturday was the Sabbath. That was like ingrained in me. I remember repeating that 10 commandment every Sabbath, almost like, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Like I can say it off the top of my head right now.
Oh, wow.
And so I was more interested in the music aspect. Like if we were to ever sit and talk theology, that's really never really been my interest. Like theology, doctrines. My interest was the music ministry. That's where my heart has always been. And working with people that were my age, like young adult, youth, younger, and mostly to do with mental health. And so that's where all my energy went to. You know, every part of the service I was singing and sort of collaborating and helping organize that. And so that's my background. And also I have a Caribbean background.
Okay.
My family is Guyanese American. And so you have that British influence, that African Caribbean influence. And so our worship is a mixture of like, how would I describe it? It's like we're really reverent, but also like expressive about how we feel about God. And my family culture is ministry. So everyone is in some aspect of ministry. And my grandmother and my grandfather pretty much started that, like that's how we do things, you know?
Yeah.
And so me questioning my spirituality is like, hold up now. So you say you don't want to be part of our group anymore? You're saying like, you don't want to, you're like, what worked for what worked for your grandmother and grandfather is no longer good, you know? So, the start of the questioning was like secretive at first, because how dare I question what has worked generation after generation? And so I've been questioning whether God was for me, or even just questioning whether the community I was in was a safe place or a good place for me. For years, I just had to make sure I was okay with saying it out loud. You know, I would like test the family, like, let me just see how they feel. And they'd be like, girl, you know, what are you going to do with that? Or like, no, don't question it. Or just go to church, be quiet, you know. And I just like, okay. And I would just kind of like test the waters every few years. And I say it takes a lot of courage to speak up and hold your ground.
Yes.
So it's kind of hard to start from the beginning, but that's the most I can kind of say. It's just I've been questioning things for a while.
I want to go back real quick. You said you did a lot of the music ministry, and you said with mental health. What did you mean by that?
Um, I guess the best way I could say is that I struggle with mental health, and so it was
Mm,
important for me to see people. Like when I work with the young adults, or like I would be in the group, I would look at people and I could see like their pain and their anguish, and I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do about this? Like I was a solver. It's like, what are we gonna do about the people that are hurting? What are we gonna do about the people that show up here and don't have their needs met? And so that was like because it bothered me. I wanted to know what we were gonna do, what we are gonna organize, and I don't know if they were ready for that or they did their best, but they just couldn't meet those needs. So that was just something I was aware about.
do you feel like it was more culturally, we go to church, culturally, this is important to us, but the more daily life problematic things that are not easily solvable, like mental health problems, were
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just, we try to maybe pray about it or whatever spiritual activity you could do, but not really like get into people's lives in a way that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think people just don't know how to impact that, don't have the skills to unpack that. I was born in Brooklyn and I've been to churches in Brooklyn, and then we moved to Texas, and so I was part of like a little bit of like white evangelical, a mixture of Caribbean churches. So I went to mixed churches, and then to a couple mixed churches, and then in Texas again, a predominantly Black Caribbean church. Like everyone was Black and Caribbean in that church, and then
Wow.
we did the church plant where my mom and dad started their own church. And so I got to see the big church, medium church, mixed church, and then all hands on deck church. And that was the part that was really, I didn't realize I was going to be missing so much. Like, I'm glad we're part of a church plant that I could learn to grow and be helpful and have less drama because there's less people. But what hurt me was that I didn't have people my age to mingle with. And so my needs weren't being met. And I wasn't meeting people my age. And I realized years later my mental health.
Mhm. How old were you then?
I think we started that church plant. I was age 16. I'm like 32 now. So age 16, around that age, we started it. And I stayed there until like maybe age 27, maybe?
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
10,
Okay.
yeah. Stayed in it for a good minute. Hmm.
Yeah. And late teens, early adulthood, you need people your own age. You need to
Yeah.
venture out with
You
people
find
who are
your
awesome.
you find your future spouse there too. I mean, you
Yes.
know, you look for a lot of stuff there, or maybe job prospects. People can hook you up. It's a lot that happens in that community, and so
Yeah, and you missed some of that. You said it's been a long time coming, lots of questions. You remember any of the first questions you started asking when you were younger?
hmm. I think my questions were, does prayer work?
Mm,
Um, I wanted to know, is God punishing us when we do wrong? Like me being sexually experienced at a young age. My question was, does God punish me for doing this? Am I being punished?
mm.
Um, and do people really care about me? Like, why am I here? I had a lot of like, why am I here questions. Like, what's the whole point of this? Is this like a trick or experiment? If heaven is real, what's taking so long? Is there some kind of thing we have to do to get ahead, and we're missing the point? It's like a lot of questions.
These are serious questions. You're being taught these things and
Yeah.
you believe them. So it's like, okay, here are the questions that come out of these things because you want to assume that that this is true. And you mentioned being sexually active when you were younger. I can empathize with that. When I got pregnant, the first time when my husband and I got pregnant, it was like I just assumed I would never be able to get pregnant as like
Hmm.
a punishment, as like because I had been sexually active. No one ever said that, but I just somehow, yeah, believed that there have to be consequences. We are always taught there are consequences to your sinful actions, and
Yeah, and oof. Goodness gracious. Yeah, just thinking about that, you're thinking God doesn't like you, he's punishing you, and the things you're going through are your fault. Um, and so I don't think I ever hated God. I was just like, I was angry and I was confused.
Mm.
And then I was upset with the people because I come here every week, I give my time, my energy, my treasury, and what am I getting back in return? I'm giving, I'm giving, and the life is being sucked out of me. So I was like a mixture of like, I don't understand God, I don't understand the situation we're in, God, and I also don't like the people because we're taking advantage of people. And so
How did you feel like y'all were taking advantage of people?
because every week I would show up to church, and whether there was a person to play music, I sang a cappella almost every week,
Ah,
which is good for my voice, but like not good for my mental health because I'm just giving and giving and giving, and there's no replacement, no one's stepping in, and I didn't understand that I wasn't responsible for everyone's energy and everyone's. I just took on way too much responsibility, and I didn't realize what I was doing at the time. And so just being young and being in that position, I just kind of grew up a disdain and a hatred because people weren't knowing me. They just wanted my voice. Like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? Not knowing boundaries, just not knowing what I was getting myself into. And so I wish there was like a program for people that were in ministry to help them understand it's not all on you. You have to have boundaries. You have to understand that you don't have to be perfect when you're up there. You just have to be there and just give your best. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And it's just a whole lot of stuff I just had to learn. And I just grew a hatred. I love ministry, but I just had this weird, I still have this weird thing about it where I'll do it, but I'm so protective of my voice. I don't, I'm critical and very protective. And so, yeah, it's kind of, this journey is just hard.
it is. It's hard. And thinking back, for me, I didn't know. I didn't know the word boundaries. I didn't learn any of that when I was younger. I didn't know we could have boundaries. The assumption is, of course, you give, and God will replenish you. God will, and if that's not happening, again, something's wrong with you. It's never the system is built to fail you. It's, well, then you must not have enough faith. You must not be doing something
My
right.
goodness.
Yeah.
That sounds familiar. Cause I remember no, because I remember I was in Nashville. We moved a lot. When I got married, we moved to Nashville, and I wasn't singing much. And I was the saddest then, like the ultimate saddest. But I was still going to church with my husband. And I remember someone came up to me and said, "You have to sing. You're wasting your voice. I'm gonna pray for you that God pushes you to sing." And I'm like, "What? So you're gonna go against how I feel and go to God?" I thought it was the strangest thing, and I was like, I gotta get the hell out of here. I I just got like really angry, and I
Yeah.
was like, I need to. I don't know. I can't be here anymore. I just got really sick, like physically
Mm.
sick to my stomach, and I just stood outside. And my husband's like, "Are you coming?" I was like, "I know I feel physically sick," and that's when I started like, I don't think I can go back. I don't know. I felt like the people were dangerous. I was like, wow.
Your body knows this. Like your brain may think, this doesn't make sense. They're just ordinary people, but your body's like, mm-mm, this is a threat,
Oh
and I
my
need to stay away.
gosh.
Even if you can't articulate exactly what's wrong, your body knows.
Yeah. So if I go back to age 17 when I was questioning things, the conversations I had with God was like something isn't right. And I was still talking to God. I was like something isn't right. Um I don't, even though my family wants me to be here and I still love you and I love singing, something about this Christianity just isn't enough. Like I'm hurting still, I'm in pain. When I read the Bible, I don't get any sense of relief they tell me I'm gonna get. When I pray, I'm good, but I can't pray the way they want me to. I have to pray like in a conversational, like I'm talking to a friend. That gives me a sense of peace. But I just know that I'm a little different, God, so I need to do things my way. Or you're gonna have to meet me where I am because this is not working. Like I'm halfway out the door. And so those are the kind of conversations I'd have year after year. And me and God were good in the sense of like when I prayed, things would happen. And when I pleaded, things would happen. But I think my issue was the the toxicity and the abuse that happens in church, and they're not aware or they don't know how painful things are. When you say things like that to people, like, I'm gonna pray for you, or just stuff like that, it's like, but did I ask you to? Or like maybe just do that in your quiet space, or it's just a lot of abuse that just happens and it just goes unsaid, and it really, really hurts people.
And even in small things like that, I'll pray for you. Like that, just if I don't want you to do this for me, please don't be presumptuous to just assume you know what I need or what I want. It's small, but yeah, you can feel it. You know that something's not right about this. You mentioned, like, looking back now to when you prayed for things and they happened and stuff. How do you view that now? Like, were there supernatural powers at work, or was it you, doing the things that you were praying about doing, or
It's gotta be some weird supernatural stuff. Okay, let me tell you this experience. So I'm in college, um, probably around like 2021, and I don't know what this voice was, but there's these voices saying I'm not good enough, you're not loved, you're terrible, you're pathetic. I'm like, where the heck is this coming from? It was the weirdest thing. It was just taunting me like this repeated cycle. And I'm walking around the campus, and I had like the visual of Mordecai like pulling off his clothes and screaming. Um, I had that moment at college. I started screaming and yelling and saying, "Stop! Whatever you're saying, stop!" And I had like an emotional breakdown, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do. Who do I go to? Who do I go to on the campus? People gonna think I'm crazy. I'm screaming, like these voices won't stop. And so I go to the church chapel and I fall on my knees. I start bawling. And I was like, whatever this is, you need to stop. Okay. I just need peace. I just start crying and bawling my eyes out. And then I wake up, and I don't know if things are better after that, but there was a shift after that. It was this weird shift where I just felt like I have to protect myself, and that at the end of the day, it's like me and whatever this thing is.
hmm,
Like, the only thing that can give me peace is having a conversation with this thing that I'm unaware of, like this higher being, because people don't know me, people don't understand me. There's really no one there. And people are there to help you, but like we're all kind of going through things. I just over the years, I just haven't had anyone I could really lean on other than my parents. And so I just felt like I was alone in that moment. And my school wasn't a safe place. It was an Adventist college.
oh
It was
wow.
very into like no physical contact, no sex, no nothing, no preparation for life, just school and God, or school and Christianity, whatever you want to call it. But the only thing that gave me peace was God, having a conversation. And so I was like, okay, we're good. Just this institution can go to hell, really. So that's really what I came to understand, that I could trust God, but I just can't trust this thing we've created for ourselves that we call religion or church or community. It's not really helpful unless we're willing to have the hard conversations.
What kind of hard conversations?
That like if there's a dispute between a family member, I want to be able to talk it out. I don't want the lying, I don't want the deception, I don't want the abuse, I don't want people hiding sexual abuse, or I just want things to be talked about and just put out there and be transparent. I don't want the hiding and the whispering, and I just not helpful.
In individual lives and in, like, when we think institutional church
Yeah.
world. Hmm.
It's like once you get together in this group and the group gets bigger and bigger, all these secrets happen and things aren't really talked about. And I don't mess with that. I just like stay away.
Yeah, there's a certain way the church, and I say the church, it's extremely diverse. It's worldwide. But when I think like church world in general, well, you tell me. I don't know much about Guyanese Caribbean church world. Like, coming from white evangelicalism and non-denominational churches, where there's just a way you have to look. Like,
Oh
even if you're
yes.
completely struggling and falling apart, or if the church is imploding, you still have to look a certain way.
Modesty and covered up, yeah. And preferably in a suit for men, like preferably, and long dresses. Not even like super long, but just like if you have a butt, you got to cover that up. You have boobs, you got to cover that up. Or people will pull you aside and talk to you about it. Like they'll be like, "Hey, yeah, they're pretty forward about it."
Oh man, that takes me back to Baptist days and the rules gatekeeping what women could wear, what girls could wear, and that's a whole discussion.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And so in Adventist churches, it's similar. It's
Oh, it's the same thing. I think they really mean well, but it's really bad. Like talking about people's appearance because you don't know what they're struggling with. You don't know if they can afford it or not. So it's a cringy conversation.
so for you, you've pulled apart a lot of the beliefs, the Adventist teachings, but you still cling to God. In how would you define that? I guess how would you define God?
I call God creator. I call God source, higher being. Um, and I try to keep it as simple as possible. In that sense, like I'm still holding on to that because I need something to hold on to that makes sense to me. And so that's kind of what I do. And I don't let anyone define that for me because someone else will be like, well, God is, I'm like, I'm not there. This is where I am right now. So this is what I can handle right now. Um, and yeah, I don't go to like, oh, God of the New Testament. I don't even know. I can't even open the Bible at this moment. And consistently open it and apply my life exactly to it. I'm not even close to being there. But I know that based on my past experiences and how I'm able to get up every day and function, there's got to be something that's pushing me and allowing me to like have some kind of level of strength.
Beyond yourself.
Yeah, because I've had to rely on I just found I've had hard times that people just didn't understand what I was going through. I needed someone to talk to, so it was usually God in some sense.
So at some point, you get married. So you went to college, Adventist college. Were you able to find your spouse there, or did that have to come later?
No, I went on a dating site, a Christian dating site, and I met my spouse. So I wanted someone that knew what Adventism, the culture and the feeling and all the stuff you go through. And so he grew up in that culture. He
Oh
chose that
wow.
as an adult. And so even though when I complain he doesn't fully understand, he has something to work with because he chose it as an adult versus your whole life. It's kind of just been given to you. It's a different experience.
Yes, it is a different experience. Yes, I did not grow up in the church. There are things that I learned as an adult about the rapture or hell that were easy to get rid of because I had not been indoctrinated with it my entire life. And it was, yeah, there are some seriously damaging doctrines that are taught to little children.
Yes. It's a lot of pressure to think about the cross and Jesus bleeding. I'm like, what in the world? Stop.
Yes, why are
Stop.
you teaching me this as a little kid? Like, why is
So
this? Yeah.
traumatic. So much.
So you grew up in it, but your husband didn't.
Exactly. And yeah, we get married in 2019 and he signs up for boot camp in 2020. And we are apart for 9 months and another 6 months and another, and the time just keeps, it's rough. And so I'm deconstructing full on 2020, like, let's start this. I have time to myself, thank goodness. Here's my opportunity to rip everything open and lay in bed for months and cry and go through my whole entire life. I did that in 2020. And I try to share it with him, but he just doesn't have the capacity to handle all that information because he's like military, excel, move up in rank. And I'm like, okay, you do that. I'm going to do this thing right here. And I'll share my experiences when I go through them, and we'll just take it one day at a time. Just the other day, he asked me, so there's a lot of deconstructing going on. When is the reconstruction? Are you just going to tear shit up? I was like, maybe I am tearing shit up.
Yeah.
But I'm also rebuilding. But there's a time to be angry, and there's a time to vent and share your experiences. And I'm glad there's a space online for that because I needed it.
Have you been able to find other spaces? Because sometimes it is like my husband I cannot tell him everything I'm thinking. I can't even think all the things I'm thinking because it's so much, much less putting it on him. And so have you been able to find other spaces to, yeah, to vent, to be angry, to get all of those emotions out?
I feel like 2020 was the beginning. I saw a lot of people online and sharing their experiences and listening to podcasts.
Hmm.
But in person, I'm trying to think of who. My dad. My dad was the first person I went to because he left the church when I was younger and joined his own group of people. So at a young age, I was asking him a ton of questions of like, where'd you meet the people? When you start questioning things? And he was my person I can still go to today and talk about things. And he has a group that started to meet on Zoom because of people older and they couldn't meet together, and they're based in New York. And so sometimes I log in and talk to them, but other than that, I really didn't have anyone that really got it all.
When were you able to start finding people online?
2020.
It was
I don't.
2020. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I don't remember what I typed in to find it, but I think I'm. What's that guy that has a man? I can't remember his name. Driscoll? No, no, no.
Mark
There was a
Driscoll.
guy. No, there was a guy. No, it can't be that dude. I'm like trying to think of who I clicked. I clicked on such a triggering word. I clicked on someone.
Yes, you know
I
things
know.
are
I
tough when
felt it.
just someone's name and everyone's like, oh,
Ugh.
oh,
Hey, there was a person deconstructing online. It wasn't him. And I
oh,
clicked
Joshua
on.
Harris or Derek Webb. I'm trying to think of like the
I
big
should have
name.
wrote it down. I went blank, but I just followed a bunch of people, and I'm like, oh, there's such a thing as it's deconstruction. I just kind of like went
Did you
went
know
in.
that word at the time? 'Cause I did not know that.
Mm-mm. I just found it out then. Yeah, clicking away, clicking away.
2017 was when my husband stopped believing, which sent me on a journey to be like, well, A, to try to fix him, of course. And then that did not go well. So that sent me on a journey to figure out what I did or did not believe. And by the end of 2019, I was like a little step beyond, like he's agnostic. I'm agnostic atheist question mark. It's really just I don't have a reason to believe in supernatural things. And 2020 was what a guy, a former guest named Lars calls rage learning. That was what I did in 2020 was
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn everything that I missed. And
Yes.
part of that, I don't know again what I Googled, but that was when I first started realizing, oh, there are people. That's how I found Graceful Atheist podcast. I don't know what I looked up, but started, yeah, finding podcasts and realizing there are a lot of people who often Trump's name comes up, but not always. Yeah, the face. I see. Yep, the face. Yeah, yeah. People, even if there's still some version of Christian or something spiritual, the getting rid of all the deconstructing the doctrines that just harm entire groups of people, individual people, and groups of people. So yeah, 2020 seems to be like when do you guys still go to church? Or for a lot of people, March of 2020 was the last time.
Yeah, I what was I doing? I think I took a break for a month and I wanted nothing to do with anything. Like everyone can just get the hell out, even God. I was like I had to act I felt very atheist in that moment. I just needed to be quiet. And I stopped going to church, but then I kind of like hopped back in. I got caught up with the whole Zoom nonsense, and I was singing online. I was doing special music, and I did more church than ever. I joined like a church in. I was lonely at church in Maryland, Texas, New York. I was attending all in one day, and then I just like broke down. Like, what am I doing? I'm so tired. I'm so worn out. They want me to do all these special musics, and they don't know that like I'm by myself. Number one, my spouse isn't with me. I'm not working at the moment. I'm going through it and there's no one to lean on. And they're just
Mhm.
still sucking the life out of me. And I just needed to like say no to everything. So I just like stopped after that. But I had a breakdown. I thought I could kind of like attend everything and be there. And it just became too much to keep up with. And then when I moved here in Hawaii in 2021, like the fall of 2021, I went to a service. I was like, hey, honey, let's go to a service. He's like, really? I'm like, let's go. Went down the block. I had my nose ringing. I knew it was going to be an issue because I'm not taking this nose ring out. And people were nice, but they were already electing us to do things. Like, oh my God, come to this and like come to our potluck next. They're really friendly people. Um, oh my God, you sing. I was like, please don't tell them I sing. Please don't tell them, babe. Like, if that happens, I'm going to be put in this really awkward position. Um, but I just felt like too much too soon. I'm not gonna know how to say no. I'm gonna be vulnerable. People are looking at me. I hope they don't ask me to take out my nose ring because I won't. I'm gonna be myself here. It's like I can't do the conforming. I just, if I'm going someplace, I gotta be 100% me. And that's when I plugged into the meditation spaces, people that were doing sound healing. I just kind of did all of that.
Hmm.
At least once or twice a month, I would spend my money there. It was like tithing away. You spend $20, $30. You go there, you get your yoga, you get your meditation. That's all I needed. I was like, I just can't.
So this was not at church. This was like a different place that you
So
were finding.
Hawaii to me was an opportunity to rebuild myself and
Okay.
kind of decide what I wanted to do and how I was going to move spiritually in my life. This is what I needed because I have no family here. It's just me and him, or me by myself. So this was the start of just rebuilding myself.
Yeah. So this is what you would consider your reconstruct part of reconstructing
Yeah, it
is
is.
creating your
Mm-hmm.
own. So tell me about your spirituality. You mentioned yoga and meditation.
Yeah, mostly meditation more consistently. Going to sound healing or sound bowl thing where you just lay down there. I'm crying my eyes out because whatever this vibration is, it feels so good. I'm like, oh, I need this right now. And the intentional journaling we'd have and the authentic connection classes where you're sitting in a circle and people just listen to you, talk about how your day was. They just listen to you, just say whatever you want to say, and they just hold space. They don't fix you. They don't try to say, hey, here's a solution right here. You just sit with your stuff. And there was one class I went to where they asked me, what do you need right now? And I'm like, wow, okay, I need a hug. I haven't been hugged in 6 months. And they hugged me and I bawled my eyes out. And then each individual person hugged me for 20 seconds. And then a group hug. Like, I was like, okay, if I don't go to places that have this energy, I don't want to be there. I
Yes.
literally, so that was that's my standard of like the openness and love I need in spaces. Either I create that for someone or I go to places that already have that energy. But I just can't do anything less than that. Cause wow, they don't need nothing from me but just me showing up, and that's it.
Yes. That something David says a lot in the podcast is what religion has like cornered the market on is community. But like if you find community with other real people, people can decide whether or not they believe in supernatural things, but if you're in a space where you belong, you don't have to change yourself to fit in, you belong,
Mm-hmm.
and those other people come around you and you're able to come around for other people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're a community, I don't know how to say this right, like a community species, like we need is wired into us. And so that is huge that you found this community that could, even like you were talking about the laying there, the lying there with the singing bowls and the journaling, like all the things that historically religious institutions have been like,
Yes.
we do these things. This no, anyone can use those things and be healed. Like be healed. I don't know, maybe that can start sounding
Like
too,
like finite, like this is the end of the healing. But no,
yeah,
I know
like
what you
okay,
mean. Like experience healing is kind of what you mean too.
but it's just changing. Like you're able to start dealing with stuff you may not have even known was in you before because you're now in a space where you can feel all the feelings without people judging you, which you cannot get in church.
Mm-mm.
You're in a space where you can just write or get it out of your body, and there are other people who will just come around you, and that's huge. That changes people.
Oh,
That's a
for
good thing.
sure.
Yeah. So do you still participate in that? Is that something that's still part of your life, or
I've been trying to. So now that my husband just moved back from deployment, and we're just trying to like merge our schedules together where we're But I want him to come to a class. I haven't been to a class since he's came back, so about a month and a half. But I'm like itching for another sound bowl class, so I'm either gonna go by myself or ask him to go with one that pairs up with his schedule. But I really miss it. I really miss the people.
does he seem open to things like that? To being to
Um, I make jokes like, I know it sounds a little woo woo, but I promise you it's good. It's good vibes. And I just know like, I've lost friends due to that are like super Christian. You know, they're really dedicated to the point where like they have to tell everyone about God. I respect where you are. I just that's not for me, but we can coexist. You know,
Mhm.
and but I lost friends because of that because they warned me about yoga. They warned me about this community, but there's so much love in it. So what does that mean? You know, like to me, if love is in it and it's pure and it feels good, then I'm in a good safe space for me. That's enough for me.
And sometimes a space where you can be your whole self and there's love in it and no judgment, that is threatening to institutions that need you to feel a certain way about yourself so that you will keep coming back rather than I am my whole self and I am willingly coming, not because you're filling anything up for me, but because I just want to be here. I just want to be part of this.
It's crazy. But I was listening to this testimony online from a girl that said that she was attacked by demons and different things like that, and she used like yoga as one of the reasons why. And
Oh,
the spaces I went into, she felt spiritually attacked in. So I'm like wondering, like, man, so people, Christians feel threatened by these things, and I was taught to be threatened by yoga. Like I would listen to even YouTubers that said, "Oh man, I did yoga, and you don't even understand the powers, and it's dangerous, and it's not what you think it is." And I'm like, okay, possibly that could be your experience. But when I'm in that space, that's not my experience. And so I don't know what that means, but I just know people need to listen to their bodies and intuition. And if you believe in God, you will get the answer you want. If you trust God and that's what works for you, you will get the answers you need. That's it.
in the version of Christianity I come from, the last thing you would want to listen to is your intuition
I don't know
because that
why. Why is that?
well I mean I can speculate, but yeah, like our bodies are sinful, our bodies are bad and wrong, so then if we're listening to them, our heart is deceitful above all things, all the different Bible verses. And
Yikes. Yeah, see, that's why I can't open that book, girl. I'm just telling you, it don't match right with me.
no, I understand. I'm still like I'm a few years out and I don't even believe in any kind of supernatural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I can go to lots of ancient texts and find um, beautiful words and
Oh yeah.
epic poems, and I can hear them. I am not ready to open the Bible to find any of that, and I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
Treasure, is there anything I didn't hit on that you do want to share? That's part of your journey that I was not aware about.
I feel like the deconstruction community was a safe space for me because they taught me that I don't have to have the answers. And I've never been in that space where people ask me, "Are you Christian?" I'm like, "I don't know." But I'm okay with the not knowing. And that was a nice little cushion for me. And I'm okay with the not knowings too. Like I said, I'm not ready to open this, I'm not ready to do that, but this is what I'm holding on to. And that's enough for me. And I'm also not interested in having discussions of people that are not interested in understanding, want to go back and forth and discredit how I feel or devalue how I'm feeling. I'm just don't have the energy for that. And I just have been very protective of my energy because that is just draining. It's a lot of work I've done to get here, and I'm not going back.
Yes. You spent a lot of your life just pouring out, pouring out, pouring out, pouring out.
And
It's
pretending. I was like, I've lived a
Mhm.
lot of my life pretending and being in spaces where I was a chameleon. I did a good job at looking the part, and I'm not doing that anymore. Nope. So,
I love it. That's wonderful. It's exhausting to pretend you are
gosh.
something that you're not. Even yeah, a former guest that you are familiar with, B, who was on a few weeks ago, um, he and I were just talking about that the other day. Just the having to pretend that you're something like visiting family, or you have to go to church, you have to go to a funeral,
Yep.
some kind of event, something's happening where you have to be around people from your past, and they may not know how different you are. That is just existing is exhausting.
Yeah. I'm now thinking my nephews are gonna be dedicated, and now I'm thinking about it. Kind of comes off as grief, right? Because
Mm.
You do your own healing in the corner. You're in your safe little bubble, and then you go into those spaces, and you're like, "Fuck!"
Hmm.
Like, wow,
So far, and now I have to like
revert almost
go back.
like you're a kid all over again, and like I can imagine going to that baby dedication and people like, "Oh my gosh, treasure!" or off limit, like, "Hey, can you sing us a song real quick?" I'm just gonna shut down. Like my whole body's gonna go into shock. I'm gonna be like, I don't know what to say. Do I say yes? Do I say no? I will no, but what I don't know. That's a lot. So
It is. It is a lot. When you're learning to have boundaries and learning to say no, but then you go back into a situation that feels like what it did, the same situation that you used to not be able to say no, it's almost like I don't even know. I don't even know how to be the person I am today. Like you said, you just kind of revert back, and that's hard. So your husband and you are in Hawaii.
mm-hmm.
We're hoping he will go to a sound bowl class with you.
That'd be
And so
great.
that's where
Amazing.
you guys are now.
Yes. Um, you talk about kids. I was like, ooh, child. I don't know about that yet, about how we're gonna raise them. I was like, we'll get there when we get there. That's what we usually say, and that's been working for us. Yeah, I would just say that he's doing what he's doing to get through. He's on a whole nother course. I'm on my own course, and he's respecting the fact that mine is different. And we haven't had any arguments about that. Just discussions where we just hit a road like, I can't talk about this anymore. Me neither. Cool, let's drop this. I'm tired. And we do that because he doesn't understand me or I don't understand where he's coming from. Or asking him about the Bible because he studied it longer than me. And so I'm like, hey, what does this text mean? Because I don't understand it. Not that I'm opening it, but I'm just trying to understand, like, wait, what was God? What was the whole point of that whole story? Or why do people do this? And he's like, you didn't read that part? I was like, no, I was never interested in that. And so he kind of talks about it with me. We'll have those discussions. But we don't have time to pick everything apart because we're trying to rebuild our lives and like one day own a home and stuff like that. So we have other things to worry about. But he's fine. He's different. He's in the military. He can't keep up he's just different. He's different. And I'm rolling with his changes too. So
Now, you said that he's read the Bible or studied the Bible longer than you have. That's interesting to me because he became a
yeah,
Christian as an adult and you grew up in
yeah.
it.
I would love to. I love hearing his story of like his story is wild. Like just the things he's done and how he did like the literal things in the Bible, like sell his clothing and stuff like that. He went through a drastic you know, born again sort of experience with God. And so he had that. Mine, I had like little moments of that, like wanting to be super modest at one point, trying that out. But I've never found the Bible that interesting. And that overwhelmed me. Like, what do I do with this? Like, I would read it. I'm like, I don't really agree with that part. So skip to Proverbs. I'm like, okay, we're getting this is practical. This is I can vibe with Psalms, the agony. I'm like, okay. Um, there's some parts I'm like, okay, I like this. I don't really like that part. So I just was like, okay, this is too much. I'm just gonna close this book and read my hymns, sing my hymns. Cause I love hymns so much. I'm not ready to deconstruct that. I don't think I ever will be able to, but I just love hymns. Cause they just bring me a lot of comfort, and that's kind of how I've been maneuvering. I
Yeah.
can't unpack it all.
In the Deconversion Anonymous in the Facebook group, just recently someone was talking about music and the different responses. Some people loved the contemporary, radio Christian music. Some loved Hillsong, Bethel Church kind of music. And then there are people who are like, I still listen to hymns, and they can totally do it. Like it just and music is so incredibly powerful, like
Yes.
so incredibly moving and powerful. That can often be a difficult part to no longer have in your life and part of your life for so long. How are you doing music now? What are you doing with your
Ugh.
music?
Um, I feel like music is one of those things where I have to remind myself it's okay not to have everything sort of deconstructed. Like I'm taking one small piece at a time so I remain sane and functional in real life. Um,
That's fair.
but I'm not able to sing with the kind of comfort I used to have. Like I will sing for an hour or two, Um, it's just confusing. It's confusing because I was told to sing not because it's like you have something you love so much and then someone comes and just like tries to control it and tries to get you to do things you don't want to do and then the whole boundaries thing. So when I'm singing, I'm overcritical of myself or I'm exhausted. And so in order for me to sing with comfort, I have to like free myself in a way. It's like a process. Like I'll have to just relax and say, okay, it doesn't matter if it's perfect. Just sing and enjoy yourself, and that's it. But if someone says, "Hey, can you sing me a song?" I have to record it. As a, I'm like, I can't, I can't do all that right now. It's too much. It's hours and hours and hours of work, and I can't do it with enjoyment because it's like a job.
Yes. And sometimes something you love becoming a job, that just sucks all the life out of it.
Yeah, with no payment reimbursement. So that's like what really is a second. I'm like, I'm not a kid anymore. I can't just do this for hours and hours and no reimbursement. So I do it for pure joy. I say I sing as meditation for me for pure joy. I can't do anything else with that. Like that's the best I can do for myself. I wish I can sing for people because I know that when they hear me, they're like, "Wow!" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay." That was for me though, but okay, I'm glad you like it.
If you can do it for yourself and someone else gets benefit, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you have any book recommendations, podcasts, YouTube channels that have been since 2020, since you've really been pulling things apart, have been instrumental?
Someone gave me the book, "How to Be a Successful Adult."
Oh,
Actually, someone on the deconstruction community gifted to me. They mailed it to me. I was really sweet of them.
oh,
And so it's about just being a functional adult. I feel like you sort of, if you're in the church world your whole life and you're kind of like naive a little bit or a little behind on adult matters, it's a book that could be really helpful because it shows you about how to be an assertive an adult, how to speak up for yourself, how to take responsibility, and if you don't have that teaching, the adult teaching, that it can be really helpful. A reminder would be you don't have to unpack it all. Like
hmm.
it's like the whole music thing and me singing is something that I don't have the energy to unpack, and it's gonna happen in waves. It kind of feels like grief. One minute you think you're fine, and then something comes and topples you over, and you're laying in bed like crying, like, "What? I thought I was healed from this. I thought everything was fine." And so you're gonna feel that, and it's okay. It's part of the human process. It's a winding road, and you don't have to have it all figured out.
We expect things to be linear, just getting better progressively the whole time and not anything having any problems. And that's not reality. That's good. That's a good comparison to grief. And there are, when we deconstruct something that's been an integral part of our lives for so long, you have to grieve a lot of things. You're
Yeah,
losing a lot. You lost a lot. Some things you thought were real were not real. I mean, just so much that um, it's painful. And yeah, grief doesn't. It, like you said, it comes in waves. That's a good metaphor. It really does. It comes in waves.
and you're courageous for doing this because a lot of people don't have the energy or time or privilege to do this. So you are courageous for going on this journey. Be soft with yourself because it's not easy, and the fact that you're doing this, I applaud you. Seriously,
Yes,
it's a
yes,
lot.
it is a lot. And you're right. There are a lot of people who not only don't have the privilege to do it. There are also people who like they're quote doing fine. They're like, why should I pull anything apart? Everything's fine. I would have, 6, 7 years ago, I would have said that. Now, my mental health was just atrocious and falling apart, but I didn't know that's what was happening at the time. But I've heard it often said, and tell me if this is true. Like, it wasn't that I chose to not believe whatever the thing is. It was I realized I no longer believed. And you can't suddenly make yourself believe something that you
For
don't.
sure. Once something is stretched and the mind is it's stretched, it can't go back to its original form. It just can't. And so you're like, well, I can't ignore this anymore. If I do, I will die. So I have to
Yes, yes, there's a lot of
I have
truth
to
in
move
that.
forward. I have to move forward.
Well, thank you so much, Treasure. This was wonderful. I really enjoyed this conversation and your willingness to tell your story and like you said, just the freedom and the courage that you found to be able to pull things apart and then move forward, let your pursuit take you wherever it's going to take you, and not feel like you have to stop asking questions or stop moving on your journey because it's going in a direction that, in the past people have said, don't go that way or whatever. So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Ooh, one more thing. I wanted to thank my spouse. I feel like if
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't making the sacrifices that he's making, I probably wouldn't have the time, space, and energy to do that. I get to stay at home a lot and I get to work from home and I get to take classes. And while he's mentally and physically doing all that he can, he doesn't have the time to do what I'm doing. And so it's because of him that I have this opportunity and space to travel and kind of find myself all over again. So I'm grateful for him, really.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Treasure. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Final thoughts on the episode. Treasure has a fantastic story. I think for someone like Treasure, who used her voice in worship and was a part of ministry and saw behind the curtain a bit, and many other people that are in the same situation, it is difficult to unsee the human beings behind the curtain when it comes to ministry. It sounds like Treasure had times where people just saw her as her voice rather than a full human being. And it's interesting to hear her at the end of the conversation say that she's having to deconstruct singing to be able to enjoy it again for its own sake. Arline points out, and I think it's very true, that many of our community members, many of our guests, including Treasure, began their deconstruction in 2020. The separation from physically going to church gave lots of people the time and the space to be outside of the bubble and to begin to ask questions. I love the question that Treasure's husband asked: is there going to be any reconstruction, or are you just tearing shit down? I'm going to talk a bit more about this in the Secular Grace Thought of the Week section, but I'll just say here, I think it's okay to just tear shit down. Reconstruction can be useful if you do so on your own terms, as it sounds like Treasure has for herself. Learning about yoga, the vibrations classes, and things that she just found meaningful and found a community who loved her and cared for her. And finally, I love that Treasure says that she's okay with not knowing. She can live with some uncertainty. And I truly think that is the end goal of deconstruction, is to come to the point where you realize there may not be answers to all of the questions that we ask. And unlike Christianity that says that it has all the answers, we actually have to live in the real world where there are not answers for everything. I want to thank Arline for guest hosting, and Arline will continue to do so. If you've always wanted to tell your story on the podcast, but I'm a bit much and you would prefer to have Arline interview you, please reach out to us. We'll have Arline conduct that interview, and that would be fantastic. I very much want to thank Treasure for being willing to talk to Arline and sharing her story with vulnerability and honesty. Thank you, Treasure, so much for being on the podcast. The Secular Grace Thought of the Week is: it is okay to tear shit down. It is okay to deconstruct to the bare bones until you find that which is true. I think a description of my deconstruction was that exactly, is that I was looking for something I could push against, something that was real, something that was true. And the deeper I dug into my faith, the shakier that became. I was tearing shit down. I want to be nuanced here and careful. For many of you listeners, reconstruction is a valid part of this process. Regaining or retaking is a better word, parts of your former faith that you find useful. The obvious example for this podcast is grace, secular grace, that I am redefining the term grace and using it in a humanistic way. But I also want to caution that a full reconstruction, a rebuilding of faith in the mold of Christianity, is not a requirement. And the evangelicals around us will tell us that it is. You can deconstruct so much. You can have questions, but you can only question so far. And then you must build back to the faith you had before. And all I'm saying here is you can tear shit down until you find something that is true and solid and real and can be tested and stands up to scrutiny and criticism. I really appreciated that Treasure said that the Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group was a safe place for her to ask questions, to be angry, to vent. And I hope that that can be a safe place for you as well. Please consider joining the group at facebook.com/groups/deconversion. We keep talking about the amazing interviews that are coming up. Next week, we have Daniel, who is also from the Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group. And Daniel has a background in psychology as well as some social sciences. His specific background is in addiction. We talk about some of the evangelical attempts to quantize deconstruction and what they get right, what they get wrong. It's a really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed meeting Daniel, and I think you'll be fascinated by him as well. Then after that, we have Jessica Moore, who's also part of the Deconversion Anonymous Facebook group. Are you sensing a pattern? And she is a life coach that helps people out of the purity culture and the damage that has been done to people through purity culture. After that will be Kendreas. And after that will be another Arline guest host scenario with Boundless and Free. So we've got just a number of really interesting interviews lined up, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until then, my name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. Time for the footnotes. The beat is called Waves from Mackay Beats. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can promote it on your social media. You can subscribe to it in your favorite podcast application, and you can rate and review it on podchaser.com. You can also support the podcast by clicking on the affiliate links for books on gracefulatheist.com. If you have podcast production experience and you would like to participate with the podcast, please get in touch with me. Have you gone through a faith transition and do you need to tell your story? Reach out. If you are a creator or work in the deconstruction, deconversion, or secular humanism spaces and would like to be on the podcast, just ask. If you'd like to financially support the podcast, there's links in the show notes. To find me, you can Google Graceful Atheist. You can Google Deconversion. You can Google Secular Grace. You can send me an email, gracefulatheist@gmail.com, or you can check out the website, gracefulatheist.com. My name is David, and I am trying to be the Graceful Atheist. Join me and be graceful human beings. This has been the Graceful Atheist Podcast.